I'd like to call to order the Amberley Village Council meeting of April 10, 2023. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardock. Ben Hunt.
Here.
Tom Muthing.
Here.
Keely Paul. Here. Bob Rosen.
Here.
Jay Schatz.
Here.
Dara Wood.
Here.
Scott Larmer.
Here.
Brian Bloom.
Here. And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. First item on the agenda is our minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. Those minutes were circulated in advance, and there was one small change that was circulated this afternoon. Are there any further changes? No. Seeing none, we can consider the minutes approved. We'll now move on to the finance report for February of 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. In your council packet is a summary of the general fund revenues and expenses, and also the finance report for the month of February. So we're talking about the month of February revenues from the earnings tax, $170,800 for the month of February. In total, we've collected $670,000 year to date. So we're at an 18% collection rate at this point because our estimate is 3.7 to collect in 2023. The total revenue for the month of February, $808,000. And that represents a year-to-date of $1.3 million in general revenues that have been collected. Our estimate for the entire year is just a little over $6 million. So 22% has been collected thus far. On the expense side, the month of February expenses totaled $529,000. Our budget for this year is $6.8 million. We've spent $1.1 million, so we've spent about 17% of the budget as of the end of February 2023. And then that leaves us with a general fund unencumbered fund balance of $5.4 million. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we'll move on to committee reports. And first, the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee, Councilwoman Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. The Health, Education, and Welfare Committee met about a week or so ago, and we just really did kind of a recap of pedestrian and traffic safety with several new council members on it. We kind of wanted an update on what has been done. So Sergeants Shaw and Schmidt-Gosling came and did a little presentation and talked about how we deal with the complaints and issues and update how Amberley Village and the police department deals with distracted driving and road safety. And for a short recap, the 3 E's are education, educating residents to reduce speed, engineering, sign placement, pavement markers, things such as that, and then enforcement, citations, and warnings. And also important to note that as of April 4th, the Ohio law regarding using your cell phone while driving, texting while driving, has changed. It is now a primary offense, or can be a primary offense, so a person can be pulled over just for using the phone, whereas in the past it has been a secondary offense. And there'll be about 6 months of warnings for people before they start doing citations, so people get used to it. As far as some more education, an article is going to go out about distracted driving, some things that Amberley does. We give out reflective straps to people that may be walking in the evening at the village. You can just pick those up here. There are some more signs that have gone up on Section Road to remind people to walk in the opposite direction of traffic, some spinner tops, and things such as that. If you hear complaints or see things, or there are areas that need to be watched more, please just let Amberley Village Police Department know. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the Law Committee and Councilman Bardock.
Law Committee met on April 3rd, and we reviewed the legal cost of the village, and we concluded that legal costs for the year-to-date are substantially down from the prior year. In addition, we reviewed regulations for trailers and came up with some conclusions on trailers not exceeding 4 feet in width and 8 feet in length for storage on residential properties. And I think that ordinance revision might go to the Planning Commission at this point for further review and deliberation. So that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions? I mean, it's worth noting it'll go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will send it back to us with possibly some recommendations, changes, whatever, and then council will consider them. Okay, we'll now move on to the Streets, Public Utilities, and Sewers Committee, and Councilman Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Streets Committee met on April 3rd. There were 3 items on the agenda. The first item on the agenda, the village manager reviewed for the committee the Accelerated Streets Program, which was put into place, I believe, 3 years ago by council. The total cost of this program over its 8-year life is expected to be $6.7 million. And to this point, the program is basically on schedule. The second item that the committee took up, the village manager and Chris Fritsch, our zoning administrator, provided the committee with an update on the Farm Crest reconstruction project and the Weehee Road improvement project. So the Farm Crest reconstruction project, they're scheduled to begin their second year of work sometime in the month of April. It's expected that all work on that project will be completed sometime this summer. In the meantime, a letter was sent out to all the residents on those streets who will be affected by the project because the street is going to be totally torn up. It's going to be a mess for a while. And then finally, the committee took up a resolution which will be presented next council session to recognize the Public Works people. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions? I mean, it's worth noting, I think this was a great example of, I think, communication from the admin staff and specifically the village manager related to the Farm Crest project have been excellent. And I think otherwise, the residents would have been rightfully up in arms, and there were a couple residents at the meeting that were very complimentary of the communication. So I thank you for all your efforts, and I know you will continue those efforts as that goes on. Okay, we'll now move on to the Land Development Committee and Councilman Schatz.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee met back in February. I had asked the village manager to prepare kind of an omnibus catch-up of where we're at with Amberley Green, and kudos on the effort, almost 2 hours worth of presentation, a lot of detail. I urge the public, anyone interested, to access some of the copies of the plans. None of them are, or studies, none of them are new, all of them done by MKSK, but very informative. Kind of the big picture summary, the JCC continues to be interested in the site. We don't know exactly what they will present us with. We know the public will be involved in a process of review. And really, the bottom line continues to be that of our 120 some odd acres there, about 70 of them have development possibilities. It's still a very complex, very challenging site with commercial possible on the far western side, but access continues to be an issue. And I know there's a AGD, is that referred to as the zoning has been changed? So the zoning is available on the north side along Galbraith for smaller lots, residential. Anything else, Scott?
I would just add a little bit to that on the AGD. That actually is a zoning text that encompasses the entire property. So if there is a development there is zoning text that is available, and any kind of an applicant would come and seek that kind of zoning to be applied to the property.
So that's addressing what I think council hears all the time, which is, the concern about we need more housing stock in the village, and that text reflects smaller lots, but still not anything resembling condos or anything of that scale.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll now move on to the Public Buildings and Parks Committee and Councilwoman Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. In October of last year, our committee met to do the one-year review of Ordinance 2021-8, which is regarding the dog leash laws in Amberley Green. And at that time, our committee adopted a motion to recommend extending the evening hours, which are currently 1 hour before dusk to dusk, to 2 hours before dusk, so adding 1 hour. This has been delayed for a wide variety of reasons, but I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention and give you a chance to provide input today, so that we can move forward at the next council meeting with a vote. To be clear, this is something that the village manager has the authority to do. All we have to do is make a recommendation to him. So I wanted to open if anybody had any questions or discussion. But I also wanted people to know that it is going to happen at the next meeting, because I feel like we might have some public interest.
Any questions or comments?
So I have a question. What happens as far as communicating to residents that this is up? Is it just the typical, goes on the website and things?
The plan is to include something on the next council agenda so that residents would know this is going to be discussed. One of the reasons that, and I discussed this with Councilmember Paul, is that the way it's on the agenda today, residents would not know that it is being discussed. So by right, at the May council meeting, we'll have something on there that reflects the discussion that's going to occur at the May 9th meeting.
Because I know, well, I've heard, it was quite the hot button topic as they were figuring out whether to even try off-leash hours and things. So just wanted to make sure there was enough time to get feedback and things.
And we probably will make note of this in our social media as well, since it has a bit of a colorful history.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And we'll now move on to the Public Outreach Committee and Councilman Schatz.
Yes, the Public Outreach Committee met and reviewed what is a very positive report, more traffic on some of our sites. Continues to be basic. Email is better than Twitter or some of the, or Instagram. We also discussed finding ways to highlight some of the money-saving successes of the village. I've been personally very impressed by what we've seen come across our council desks over the last year, and we encouraged more publicity and maybe a branding of the money-saving that we are doing, that Scott and the staff are doing. And finally, we talked about maybe finding ways, depending on how the port feels, but maybe publicizing some of the development opportunities that we have in our community, and asking our residents, given how well connected they are in the community, for possible leads.
Any questions? Go ahead.
To that money-saving success point, I think that in the monthly newsletter that came out just a couple of days ago, I think that was really driven home there. So I agree with that assessment that getting that story out there, I think, is really important. Just talking with some of the neighbors, and they were all very impressed with that piece. So I just wanted to put in a good word.
Just one clarification, that's the twice yearly print newsletter, differentiated from the e-news.
Right.
Okay. All right, anything else? Well, thank you. We'll now move on to the village manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and tying into Councilmember Schatz and Vice Mayor Hunt's comment about the tax savings and the culture that we have here for tax savings, the newsletter, the print newsletter, which goes out twice a year to residents, did focus on that, so we were able to take the committee's input and try to incorporate that into the newsletter. So I just wanted to point that out because it was good to see it in a different format. We've been hashing that back and forth, but it was opportunity to brag a little bit. And this council was involved last year when we approved the purchase of the boom arm mower, and that's one of our 4 or 5 different opportunities that we were able to highlight in the print newsletter. But I also wanted to print out that in the newsletter, a message from Chief Wallace in regards to asking residents to be more vigilant as it relates to locking doors. If you see something, say something. We've had a couple incidents within the village, and we encourage residents to be more vigilant and report suspicious behavior, because that's how we really need to know. We really need to know that, even if you aren't certain what it is. And then the final piece of the newsletter, just the financial overview. I know that stuff isn't real exciting to most people. I get a little excited about it, but the other part of it is just the focus on the property tax dollar, because a lot of residents think that we receive the bulk of the property taxes here in the village, and we do not. But it notes it in here that 60% of the property tax dollars go to the Cincinnati Public Schools. So that was highlighted in the newsletter. So I'd encourage you to read that, share it with other folks as well. 2 other items I wanted to mention. There's I believe it was at the last council meeting, you approved you gave me the authority to sign the contract to get municipal electric aggregation program for municipal facilities. And that AG&E did finish their process of determining the best vendor for that, and determined that IGS Energy was the preferred contractor, and they came in at a rate that actually was a little bit lower than what was anticipated, 0.0624 kilowatt hour. So it is a little lower than anticipated. So we are anticipating that the village one is still out there. That has not been acted upon. We expect that action to be taken probably sometime in June. So we're anticipating that we'll get a favorable price before we get into the heavy or the warmer season for electric. So I'm expecting that to occur within the next couple of months. So I was pleased with that part of it. And the other item I just wanted to mention, this some of you may have noticed, but Furman Road, which is actually in the city of Reading, is closed going over to Hunt. I should say Hunt Road is closed, so the detour traffic is coming over Furman, and that's causing a little bit of additional traffic from Furman out onto Ridge or Columbia Road, whichever you want to call it in that particular area. But the city of Reading did let us know that they consulted with the traffic engineer that we used a few years ago to synchronize all the lights on Ridge Road, and asked for just a little more time at the Furman and Columbia Ridge signal to allow more traffic from Furman to get out onto Ridge. So it's going to cause probably a few more backups, but just wanted council to be aware of that. And that concludes my report.
And that closure on Hunt is for temporary, or?
It is temporary, but it's a few months, I believe. I don't recall the date that when it's going to be reopened, but it's for a while.
Any other questions for the manager? And there's no chief's report, and move on to the mayor's report. First item is ordinance 2023-4, which is something we go through every year. The council has completed the process of the village manager's appraisal, and the final step in that process is the amendment to his contract, which we do on an annual basis. So before you this evening is ordinance 2023-4, which basically approves that amendment to the contract. And so I would first like to make a motion to waive the 3 readings with respect to ordinance 2023-4.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings with respect to ordinance 2023-4. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings on ordinance 2023-4. Please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Jay Schatz,
Yes.
Dara Wood.
Yes.
Now I would like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-4, which provides a 3.75% increase in the compensation to the village manager, which is the same level of increase that was given to all the rest of the Amberley staff.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2023-4, approving the amendment to the village manager's employment contract. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2023-4. Please call the roll.
Yes.
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 And now finally, I would like to make a motion that we approve this ordinance as an emergency measure. And in this case, the village manager's contract is a calendar year contract, so basically January 1. And this kind of typical, we're about a month later than normal, but we always try to get it approved, this amendment approved as fast as possible because it does have to provide for the retroactive pay increase back to January 1. So I hereby move that we approve the ordinance as an emergency measure.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2023-4 as an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2023-4 as an emergency measure. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardock. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes?
Keely Paul.
Yes.
Bob Rosen.
Yes.
Jay Schatz.
Yes.
Dara Wood.
Yes.
Okay, the next item I have is, I mentioned at the last council meeting that I would be attending the Hamilton County District Advisory Council with the Hamilton County Public Health. We get our public health services through the Hamilton County, as do all other villages in Hamilton County and all other townships. A number of other cities also get those services from Hamilton County. As a village, you're required by the state to get that service from your county. It was a very good meeting, and just kind of a refresher on what the Hamilton County Public Health does for us. They issue all birth and death records. They do a tremendous number of inspections, food inspections, swimming pool inspections, waste facility inspections, sewage treatment inspections, school inspections, and many others. The one that has been the obvious in the news most recently is we get our infectious disease services from Hamilton County Public Health, and that includes flu, COVID, sexually transmitted disease, and many others. And just with respect to COVID at the meeting, it's pretty much, we've heard in the news, the COVID cases are kind of, on a pretty flat. On the good news side is that deaths are way down. And so, as kind of was said in the news and by others, is that we're basically learning to live with COVID, and that's pretty much what they have said. I know that the health commissioner for the county he was much happier looking forward now than he has been the last couple of years, because he definitely sees, much more level work. But they have really grown their staff and have been able to grow their staff through grants, both from the state and federal. The issue that they're facing right now is because they've grown their staff, they're actually in a number of different buildings around the Clifton area and are looking to consolidate. The main building that they're in, there's a good chance, and again, it's been in the news, that the University of Cincinnati is looking for dorm space. The building that they're in is actually owned by the University of Cincinnati, and they're in there. And one of the things that they operate in there is their tuberculosis lab, and they didn't think it was a good idea to operate a dorm facility and a tuberculosis lab in the same facility. So they're looking for another building. Another issue that was discussed is illegal dumping has been a big issue, especially in a number of communities. And what Hamilton County Public Health is doing is working with the county sheriff's office and local police departments to work with communities to possibly install cameras and do things like that to hopefully address some of this illegal dumping. The other thing that they mentioned was the flu season. Again, they saw a very early peak in the flu season. We saw a lot in the press back October about that it's going to be a bad flu season, but it was a very early peak, and then it very much was a very steep decline. And then finally, the one thing we do every year at this meeting is we approve the charge for the next year that we're going to, all the communities will receive. They've been very successful over the previous 3 years holding their cost flat, so we haven't seen any increase over the last 3 years, but they did propose a 2.5% increase for 2024, and that was approved. So are there any questions related to that before I move on to the next item?
Just so people are aware, they do have an office and a location in Norwood in the same building complex that the Board of Elections is inside of. And so it's very convenient if you want to refer someone to get a shot there. I can't say enough about the wonderful staff, and it's a great location for us.
Okay, next item I have is that, I think in the Public Buildings and Parks Committee, we met last November or something to talk about the Meadowlands / Prairie project down 6 acres down at Amberley Green. Good news, Amberley won a $15,000 grant to pay for that particular project. That is a grant from the Hamilton County Public Health. That grant was announced at the meeting that I attended on March 14th. Applications were due by March 28th. There were going to be 4 communities that would win an award. In Amberley, the award was announced on April 5th, and Amberley did get the grant for that $15,000. So we now have the money to pay for that. And I think the total cost we saw was like $12,000. We added in some, since it was a $15,000 grant, we've added in some benches and things like that to make it even a little nicer. So there's also a grant that we have also received from Hampton County Public Health that was for $3,750 that we were holding off trying to identify specifically what we were going to use that money for, because if we didn't win this other grant, we were going to use it for seed or something like that. But because we won that one, we're looking to use that grant to pay for your pickleball striping, as well as the other thing that has recently come up is that with the increased use of the walking track is used a great deal. But what we looked at from a safety standpoint, the fencing around the baseball field versus that, and we found that the 4-foot fencing, when the walking track is that close to the baseball field, was not a real good idea. So we've gotten an estimate to provide for 10-foot fencing right along the walk, and 6-foot fencing on the third base side. And that grant will also be used for that. The total cost of the fencing will be a little bit more than that, but the grant will go a long ways towards paying for that. So good news on those two fronts. And then the last thing I had was some upcoming Environmental Stewardship Committee activities. First, the Amberley has been awarded Tree City USA designation again this year. I think I mentioned at previous meetings. We also won a growth award. The luncheon for that will be October 20th up in Fairfield. The Environmental Stewardship Committee meeting, the next meeting, is scheduled for April 24th at 7 o'clock down in the community room. Our annual Arbor Day and Earth Day celebration will be April 26th at 5:30. We will plant a tree at that, and it actually is a replacement of a maple on this property that died, and so we're going to be planting another maple on this property. The Environmental Stewardship Committee is going to do a Clean Amberley Day the following day on April 27th at 5:30 up here. The objective will be to clean litter along the public right-of-ways, so along the Village Hall property, along French Park, down to the green, and French Park on section also. So if anyone wants to help, they're more than welcome. One Stop Drop is coming up on May 7th, Sunday, May 7th, from noon to 3. It will again be down at Amberley Green. And finally, we are going to have a tree and nature walk on May 25th at 5 o'clock down at the Amberley Green. That will be hosted by Corey Christopher from the Cincinnati Nature Center. Corey is also the one who has been working with us on the project for down at Amberley Green. So the focus of the walk will be the trees that we have down at Amberley Green and that particular project. And I did have the occasion back, I think last October, to walk Amberley Green with Corey, and he is a person that loves trees, and he was blown away with the variety of trees that we have down at Amberley Green. So I think the walk will be very informative. So if anyone wants to join us, it's on the website. Again, it's May 25th at 5 o'clock down at Amberley Green. Are there any questions?
Is there a need for volunteers or anything for the one-stop drop?
There are. It'll be coming out. I'll actually send an email to Kathy Kramer tomorrow because it's usually out by now. But yes, we will definitely need volunteers. Any questions? Okay, new business. I know the Vice Mayor has one item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a mention that Amberley Village will once again be hosting a Drug Take Back Day event here on April 22nd from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. Residents are encouraged to dispose of unused or expired prescription drugs. They can bring them here to the Village Hall, and the police will take care of it. And then also a mention that that service is actually always available from the police department here, but we do try to call attention to it when there is the National Day on April 22nd.
I have a question in anticipation of public comment next week. What is our next meeting on the Amberley Green? What is our policy in terms of non-residents addressing council?
I mean, we have, on many occasions, had non-residents address council. Generally, those are, public library
Right, sure.
and things like that. But non-residents can address council. The only thing we will do in a situation is that there's a limit of 3 minutes, but if they're recurring comments, so if we hear the same comment over and over, we will shorten the 3 minutes. So, but yeah, non-residents are free to address council. This is a public
Sure,
forum.
just curious. Do we prioritize Amberley residents?
In order to address council, and in this case, it's not a public hearing.
Right.
It'll be on the agenda, and therefore, in order to be able to address council, you have to register to speak, and that has to be done by noon on the day
Got it.
of the council meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or any other new business? Seeing none, we can consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.